Shalom again from Toward a More Jewish Jesus, where everything gets better when people get together around a more Jewish Jesus. We're glad you're with us today. We're representing an organization known as Interfaithfulness. And in Interfaithfulness, what we try to do is upgrade spirituality and relationships for Jews and for Christians. And that's where I want to park myself today, about upgrading spirituality. I want to talk about finding our place in God's big story. Let's start at a place that all of you are familiar with. It's called Starbucks. I want you to picture a Starbucks. You go into a Starbucks, and it's just so interesting. People, when I go in, I'm kind of a white bread Starbucks customer. I order a decaf, a grande decaf. Seldom do I order designer coffees, but you'll find people come in and make all kinds of designer requests, and the combinations seem to be endless to me. I think spirituality is that way too. If you went into that Starbucks and you interviewed all the people there, you'd find that their take on spirituality is also very self-designed. People are picking all kinds of spiritualities nowadays. But whatever kind of spirituality you have, it seems to me as though it always assumes or even states where you fit in a bigger story. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about Scientology, but I'll talk about it a little bit right now. That's one of the newer spiritualities, one of these designer spiritualities. But anybody who's got any acquaintance with Scientology knows that people within that system find themselves in a bigger story about thetans and about other universes and about the time-space dimension. There's a whole big Megillah that they fit into. And in any spirituality, there is a stated or unstated big story. The big story for people of Buddhistic faiths would be that people see themselves in the context of the great world soul and of an omnipresent God consciousness or whatever. There's always a big story behind people's individual stories. And today I want to ask, how can we find ourselves in the big story of the God of the Bible? Especially, how can we Jews find ourselves in that big story? And there are many ways to slice this particular piece of pie. Let's say that for Jews, we see ourselves as a people among whom God wishes to dwell and whom he wishes to honor him. We Jews see ourselves in the midst as a people of God among whom he wishes to dwell and whom he desires would honor him. And Christians plug into this story, by the way. It's not just a Jewish story. We're going to look how Jews respond to the story a little bit today, but the whole thing about the gospel and about the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament and the Apostle Paul and all of that, was that the pagan world was invited into the Jewish story. Getting back to the Jewish story, it starts in the beginning of Genesis, What do you have there? You have humanity, Adam and Eve, and you have God with them in the midst of the garden, walking in the midst of the garden. You have this standard Jewish story that God dwells in our midst and he wants us to honor him. Isn't that what happened with Adam and Eve? He wanted them to honor him. He said, look, you can have anything you want, any tree you want, anything you want around here is yours. Don't touch that tree. Don't eat from that tree. And that was all about honor. It's not about food. God wanted to be honored. He deserves it. So I call this God's dream, by the way, and the Bible states it this way: I will be their God, they will be my people, and I will dwell in the midst of them. That is really the story of the Bible in a nutshell. When you get to the end of the story, you get to the book of the Revelation, all the way at the end. What do you find? Let me read you this. This is from Revelation chapter 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. Then I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. I heard a voice from the throne saying, "Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God." There it is at the end of the Bible. I will be their God, they will be my people, I will dwell in the midst of them. It's borrowing language from and thought all the way from the beginning of the Bible. So, and by the way, I misquoted that text because we usually say, "I will be their God and they will be my people and I will dwell in the midst of them." In Revelation, it doesn't say that. It says, "I will be their God and they shall be my peoples." My peoples. The Greek word is laoi. And what that means is that when all is said and done, when history comes to its conclusion, when we're all in the presence of God, there will still be people groups, there will still be nationalities, we will still be human beings. As a matter of fact, the Bible doesn't look at us being up in the clouds, floating around, playing harps. The Bible talks about a new heaven and a new earth, and us living in embodied immortality. That's pretty darn exciting. Koreans will be Koreans, Jews will be Jews. We will be who we are now, but we'll be impervious to death in what's called glorified bodies. So we see here that the picture that the Bible has of where we fit and who God is and what the whole story is about. At the beginning, he tells us that it's humanity living together in harmony with God in the midst, the Garden of Eden. And the people are supposed to honor God by doing what he says and not doing what he says don't do. By the end of the Bible, we have God saying, "At last, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will be their God and they will be his people. He will dwell in the midst." That's the end of the story. But we find this to be true also in the middle of the story, in the middle of the Jewish story. If you read the Jewish Bible, let me read you this that I wrote here. For the Jewish people, not only in the beginning and not only at the end, but also in the midst of time, the dwelling place is the locus of encounter with God, whom we honor, the dwelling place. So we find in Exodus chapter 25, verse 8, the purpose of building the tabernacle, which was a tent as a dwelling place for God, as the children of Israel were wandering in the wilderness, and that was eventually replaced by the temple. We read of the tabernacle, God says, "Let them make for me a sanctuary that I may dwell in their midst." Earlier, when the children of Israel are coming out of Egypt, they come through the Red Sea. We read this, the people are spoken of as those whom God has purchased, whom he will bring in and plant in his holy mountain, quote, "the place, O Lord, which you made for your abode." The idea is that God is going to bring the Jewish people to his holy mountain, to Mount Zion. He's going to build a temple there. The temple is meant to be a dwelling place for God. Speaking of the temple, you get to King Solomon. King Solomon built the first temple. In the book of 1 Kings, for those of you who are Bible readers, 1 Kings, we read the dedication of the temple. And Solomon has this whole contemplation. He's saying, but where is the dwelling place of God? He says, doesn't God fill the whole universe? Yes. But does God especially manifest himself in the temple? Also yes. It's both and. The prophets, Isaiah, Zechariah, Ezekiel, the New Testament writers, they all deal with this question. Where does God dwell? He fills the universe. He was manifest in the temple. In the New Testament, we are taught that the presence of God dwelt in the Messiah, but he also inhabits his people. He inhabits his people who believe in the Messiah. He inhabits them, he inhabits us individually, he inhabits us collectively. And that's why there was a Christian author years ago named A.W. Tozer, and he wrote a book with the striking title, Man, the Dwelling Place of God. God dwells in our midst, and he wants us to honor him. That's very much the Jewish story. So, For Jewish people living as Jews, how do we put all of this into practice? We believe that God is especially present in the home. The temple is gone. The first temple is gone. The second temple was destroyed. The first temple was destroyed in 586, 587, 587, 586 BCE. And then the second temple was destroyed in 70 of the Common Era. So where does God dwell now? Yes, he fills the universe, we know that. But where is he especially manifest? For Jewish people, it starts in the home. The home is, in a way, the holy of holies of Jewish life. It's where the presence of God is meant to be especially concentrated. And that's why here at Interfaithfulness, the people who produce toward a more Jewish Jesus, our concern is to develop the spirituality of the home, discipling households within the house of Israel. So, in the home, God is especially manifest. The Jewish life speaks of the home as a mikdash ma'at, a little tabernacle, a little temple, a place where God is especially manifest. And we're called to honor him in our homes, and that's why we read about the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. But then it goes on. Let me briefly look. It's in Deuteronomy, Devarim chapter 6. Let me read something that's kind of interesting there that really amplifies the home-based honoring of God, that the dwelling place that God occupies in a special way in Jewish life is the home. And we read this in Deuteronomy chapter 6. As I read, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And these words which I command you today shall be in your heart, and you shall teach them diligently to your children. You shall talk of them when you sit in your house. Whoa, see that? And when you walk by the way, when you lie down and when you rise up, you shall bind them for a sign on your hand, etc., etc., etc. When you sit in your house, that's home base for the presence of God and for the people of God. So, the word in Jewish life for how we're supposed to show respect for God is kavod. Kavod is an interesting word. It means, it's related to the word for heavy. It's treating God with appropriate weight. And you could say that all of Jewish life is a means of distributing kavod, of distributing due honor to God, of distributing due honor to people, of distributing due honor to those with whom we live. Let's talk about one particular way that is given to us to honor God in our homes, recognizing that the home is meant to be a place where the presence of God is especially concentrated, and that it's from our homes that we go out. You shall, these words I command you today shall be in your heart. You shall teach them to your children. You shall speak of them when you're in your home, when you're in your house. Then when you go out, when you walk by the way. So how do we honor God in the home? Let's talk about one particular way. Let's talk about Shabbat. Comes once a week. And it is the time when we especially welcome the presence of God in our homes, when we especially elevate our awareness that God wants to dwell in our midst. So I want you to imagine that you are going to have a dignitary come to your home. The President of the United States, you might not consider the President of the United States a dignitary, so it might be the Queen of England, somebody who you would really, really, really want to honor. What are you going to do? You're going to prepare the house. So that's one of the things we Jews do in order to welcome the presence of God in our homes for Shabbat. And we welcome God by welcoming the Sabbath Queen. But what do? We clean the house. Religious Jews will make sure the house is clean to welcome this guest. We also dress in our finest clothing. We're welcoming an honored guest. We also have special foods. The best food that we eat all week is on Shabbat. We also have special implements around the table, the very finest implements to do the ritual aspects of Shabbat. Our best dishes, we dress up for the occasion, the best implements, everything is nothing but the best will do for this honored guest of ours. And then we have what I might call God's 12-step plan. You know, we talk about 12-step programs. Well, when you do the Shabbat meal, there are 12 steps that I want to run through quickly. And I want to discuss how all of this ties in with the whole idea of honoring God as he wishes to be honored, because he's present in the home. First, we light the candles. There are candles that are lit in order to begin Shabbat. In order to say, this is holy time. This is not like the rest of the week. This is a different day. This is a whole different ball game. So the candles are lit in order to initiate this special time. You know, it occurs to me that in Western life, we use candles a lot like that. You know, when a woman wants to have a special dinner for her husband when he comes home, very often we use candles. When we have a birthday, people light candles. Candles are very often associated with holy time and special things. When in Jewish life, when we honor the deceased, we burn a yortzeit candle. And on Shabbat, we light candles that stand for two verbs, shamor and zachor, to guard and to remember the Sabbath. Because in one of the versions of the Ten Commandments, we're told to guard it, guard the Sabbath, and another one we're told to remember it. So we light these two candles to remind ourselves we're supposed to guard and remember what the Sabbath is about. So, 12-step program. First step, light the candles. Second step, you bless the children. You want to show them proper honor. And so every week we say a blessing for our sons. May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh, who were sons of Joseph. And then for our daughters, we say, may God make you like Sarah, Rivka, and Rachel, and Leah. Then we show honor to the event. We sing Shalom Aleichem, where we welcome angels to our home at Shabbat. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We welcome these angels to our home. Then we honor the wife of the house. We've honored the children. We've honored Shabbat. We've honored these angels that come to our home at this special time. Now we honor the wife, and we read what's called Eshet Chayil. Eshet Chayil is a woman of valor. It's Proverbs 31. And it's good to honor the wife on Shabbat because she has worked very hard for the family, but especially for Shabbat, she works hard. So that's the fourth step, lighting the candles, blessing the children, welcoming these angels, singing Shalom Aleichem, blessing our wife. In some homes, by the way, in these egalitarian days, we also bless the husband. We read from one of the Psalms, which talks about the man of God. And then we have a special ceremony called Kiddush. We take a cup of wine. Most of you know this. We take the wine, the husband stands, he holds the wine in his hand, and he says this. He says, now let me read this to you in English. And there was evening, there was morning, a sixth day. The heavens and the earth were finished, the whole host of them. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day, sanctified it, because in it he rested from all the work which God had created and done. So this reminds us that Shabbat is about honoring God for his work of creation from which he rested on the seventh day. Then we go on. We say, blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with his commandments and has been pleased with us. And you have willingly and lovingly given us this holy Shabbat as a remembrance of creation. The Shabbat is the first among the holy days. It's a remembrance also of something else, of the exodus from Egypt. Indeed, you've chosen us and made us holy among all peoples and have willingly and lovingly given us this holy Shabbat as an inheritance. Blessed are you who sanctifies Shabbat. Amen. So, we remember two things. We remember creation, and we remember that we're not slaves anymore. In all these prayers, God is honored, he's loved, and we're welcoming him into the house. Let's speed ahead. The sixth step is we do a ritual hand washing. This is something that priests did when they were going to offer sacrifices. They would go through a ritual hand washing. Actually, they'd wash their feet too. And we wash our hands because we're about to bless the bread, which is the way we begin the meal. And the meal is like a sacrifice in the temple. Since the house is now a little tabernacle or a little temple, what do we offer as a sacrifice? The bread is a reminder of the sacrifices we used to offer in the temple. And so, like priests wash their hands before they offer the sacrifices, we do the same. We wash our hands, step number 6. Number 7, we bless the bread. Number 8, we eat. And in all of this, we honor God. We give thanks to him. The meal is a meal at which he is the honored guest. Then we sing songs. That's step number 9. Then we have a holy teaching from God's word. Because we're honoring our guest, we want to honor his teachings. Step number 11 is we have a whole blessing after the meal. And I wish I had time to go through all of it for you. But I'll say we thank God for the food. We thank God for the land of Israel. We thank God for Jerusalem, the holy city. We thank God for his goodness. All of this is at the table, a time of elevating our awareness of our honored guest, the Lord God himself. Then finally, the next night, we spend the whole day, by the way, the whole day of Shabbat is meant to be spent in special ways that honor God. It's not just the weekend, it's the Lord's day. It's Shabbat. Then on Saturday night, we want to end Shabbat because it's been a special time. We want to mark it by bringing it to an auspicious conclusion. We say this, blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe. You separate the holy from the mundane, light from darkness, Israel from the nations, the seventh day from the rest of the 6 days of the week. Blessed are you, Lord our God, who distinguishes the holy from the mundane. And we also bless some wine. We have some incense, some spices that remind us of the fragrance of Shabbat. We have a candle. The candle, the wicks of the candle, the lights of the fire remind us of the lights of creation, because we're going into the first day now, into the first day of the week, which for Jews is Sunday. And on the first day of the week, God created the lights, the lesser light to rule the greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night. So we have a candle with lights, in which we then turn our attention to saying we're going back into the cycle of the days. And in all of this, we honor God. Many people think Jewish ritual is a nuisance. It's not a nuisance at all. It's a way of reminding us of the story that we fit into, reminding us of the presence of God in our midst, reminding us that we're supposed to spend our lives honoring him. So my hope and prayer for you, if you're Jews, that you will learn to honor God in the context of Shabbat, because we know who we are when we find ourselves in God's story. And if you're not a Jew, so much of this story applies to you too. You've been invited into the Jewish story. And we do believe that everything gets better when people get together around a more Jewish Jesus. We'll talk more about that next time. But for now, shalom. Thank you.
You may support our work at Toward a More Jewish Jesus by sending your tax-deductible contributions to Interfaithfulness, P.O. Box 6137, Altadena, California 91003, 6137. That's Interfaithfulness. P.O. Box 6137, Altadena, California 91003-6137. Please make out your checks to Interfaithfulness. If you prefer donating on the web, please visit us at www.interfaithfulness.org and look for the donate button in the lower right corner of the page. We invite you to follow us too at our Interfaithfulness Facebook page. Thanks for joining us today at Interfaithfulness, where everything changes for the better when we move toward a more Jewish Jesus.